Raise your right hand. Repeat after me with your name. I
Hi, it's Todd Rogenkamp.
do
Steve
solemnly
Jensen.
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
Do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties of
and faithfully discharge the duties of mayor
council in the city of Breezy Point in the county of Crow Wing,
in the city of Breezy Point in the county of Crow Wing,
in the state of Minnesota,
in the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to
to the best of my judgment and ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Why did it do that? Jeez. That was weird. I do not have a gavel
Yeah.
to get one. We got 1 minute. All right, it is 6:30. I'm going to call this meeting to order. The City Council regular meeting Monday, January 6, 2025 at 6:30 PM. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda, item 4, roll call. Administrator Bonsack?
Councilman Ball,
Present.
Councilman Jensen,
Present.
Mayor Rogenkamp,
Present.
Councilman Maroney,
Present.
Councilman Scott.
Present. Thank you. Item 5, approval amendment of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions, deletions to the agenda at this time?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Maroney and a second from Councilmember Jensen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Moving on, item 6, consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have 6A, December 2nd, 2024, regular city council meeting minutes. 6B, December 20th, 2024, special meeting minutes. 6C, claims totaling $463,362.96, comprising of e-checks 3734E to 3760E and checks 139,873 to 139,947. And 6D, a resolution approving mayor as signatory and for safety deposit box. Any issues with the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have Councilmember Maroney with the first. I have Councilmember Ball the second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, item 7, open forum. If there's anybody who likes to address the council at this time in open forum, you may do so by coming forward to the podium. Please announce your name and your address. You're limited to 3 minutes. I'd like to recognize, too, that if you do speak to the council, that we will just strictly be taking what you say to us as information, unless otherwise noted. Is there anybody who wishes to address the council in open forum? Yes. Come forward, please.
Bill Toth, 31877 Green Sea Drive, Breezy Point. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'll be brief. I have a big agenda. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being willing to sit in those chairs. I may disagree with some of you, your decisions, but I respect the fact that you're willing to take the heat and sit in those, and serve our city, so thank you. I would request that all of you remember that you represent us, the Breezy Point taxpayer and resident here. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I spoke to, before the last election in 2022, I spoke to Mr. Jensen and Mr. Scott about wanting to watch out for us, the taxpayer, and to be as transparent as possible. They both assured me that that was one of their main reasons for running. They wanted to do that for us, the taxpayers. In my opinion, both have kept their promises in that regard, and I and many other Breezy Point resident taxpayers feel that there's no need for any apologies or statements. So let's get on with the people's business, and I hope the newspaper person here is here to print that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishes to address the council in open forum? One more time. Open forum is now closed. Moving on, we have item 8 on the agenda is the Bushman Road project status. Mr. Paul Sandy.
Great, good evening, Mayor and Council. I delivered an additional memo tonight that you should all have in front of you that I'll be covering here as a part of this meeting tonight. Memo in your packet is a quick update on the Bushman Road project. Number one, I won't get too into detail on this as you've all had an opportunity to read it. Design plans and specs, we've made significant progress on the finalization of the design of Bushman Road and Ranchit Drive. Getting back into the second public open house, we took a lot of comment about proposed temporary construction easements, and we've made a lot of adjustments to our design to help reduce those throughout the project, especially in areas where we were getting significantly outside that 33-foot proposed easement. Additionally, we've had some pretty significant coordination with Great River Energy of recent. They are the owners of the transmission line that is nearest to Bushman Road. We've been coordinating with them and discussing potential pole impacts with them. Upon having a couple meetings with them, we've made some slight adjustments to our design to completely avoid pole impacts and trying to avoid an area within 25 feet of their poles. What they are basically, all their poles are under easement, and what we're running into is a lot of the poles are within that 25, like Bushman Road is actually within that 25-foot road easement, or what we could consider the prescriptive easement of the roadway. But having discussions with them, we were getting into a couple of their poles with the actual pavement, and so we've adjusted the horizontal alignment of Bushman Road in 2 specific locations to avoid those conflicts with their poles. And so that has been ongoing, along with trying to reduce the excavation around poles by adding a little more curb and gutter to some specific areas. So that coordination is still ongoing. We sent them a set of drawings today with all of our adjustments that we've made, and are waiting to hear back from them and schedule another meeting. Another part of this that we've been working on is discussions with Crow Wing County about modifications at County Road 11. We've sent them a couple of options for consideration. One is to move the current bypass lane. As you recall, with the new road alignment of Bushman, we're shifting the road a little bit south. Not only improve the sight distance on County Road 11 as you're coming around that curve southbound, it also flattens that curve out as you approach County Road 11 on Bushman Road. So with that, the bypass lane on County Road 11 will have to move a little bit south. If that's the route that the county would prefer, is just returning that bypass lane. We also sent them an option to put in a dedicated left turn lane. And so those discussions we need to have yet to see which route they would like to pursue, whether that be a fully dedicated left turn lane on the county road or just a continuation of what's out there today with that bypass lane. Right-of-way acquisition, you'll see in the back of the room here tonight, we have all 27 appraisals and they're ready to distribute. I will get into the total project cost memo that I handed out here tonight. But our appraisals were done and received on Christmas Eve. We prepared a just compensation memo that typically the city administrator would sign upon you guys authorizing the distribution of the appraisals. And I'll get into the total cost of the appraised total amount here when I get into this other memo. Once that's signed, we have all the packages prepared to go out tomorrow morning. But we were asked from a couple of folks that if the council does move forward with approving the total appraised amount, that we give those appraisals out tonight. So I did end up printing all the copies of all the specific appraisal reports for distribution tonight. They will also, if they did not receive it in the mail by the open house on Wednesday, we can also hand those out at the open house. So they have a copy of those in hand. Folks will still receive a bound copy of their appraisal, an offer letter, and the easement documents for signing if they want to just execute right away. Obviously, there is negotiating that does take place for a lot of these, and so the full package will include the offer letter, the appraisal, and the signing documents. We do have a final open house planned. That'll take place on January 8th at 5 p.m. The main purpose of that meeting, we've prepared project boards that outline proposed project phasing and construction timeline and corresponding detours. This is a suggested phasing plan, and I want to make everyone very aware of that the contractor, when a contractor comes on board, they'll be required to submit a traffic control plan. We provide a suggestion to them of what we think makes the most sense. Sometimes contractors will look at our drawings and say, we think this helps our operation if we do it this way. And so we have a suggested phasing plan. Contractor might come back and actually say, based on our operations and how we work, we would prefer doing it this way. If it's approved by the engineer, we'll usually move forward with that phasing plan and then try to disseminate that information to the public as clearly as possible. Ongoing communication. As part of our services that we typically provide, we will set up a project hotline with a one-stop phone number for residents or travelers that might have questions about the project. And that gives people direct access to the project team. And so members of our public engagement team, they man this hotline either by email or phone. And those communications get directed directly to the project manager to answer questions from the public. And so all of that information will be at the open house. There'll be a sign-up sheet for that hotline. And so whenever we have a weekly update about project progress, detours, signing, whatever that may be, anyone who signed up for that project hotline will have the ability to receive those emails on a weekly basis. Any questions about that first memo that's in your packet?
Yeah, I just have a question. You had mentioned with the poles and where they're located, it really not being feasible to move them at all, but the roadway itself getting as close to some of the poles as it is. Are we looking at any potential barriers or something of the sort to reduce the safety hazard there?
Yeah, so any areas where the road was getting really close to the poles, there's a couple locations. One specifically at the intersection of Ranchette and Bushman. There's that pole just on the north side of the intersection there. We've, in order to get rid of clear zone requirements, you can add barrier curb, and that only requires a 2-foot clear zone behind the curb. And so we shifted the alignment just enough to be able to put curb in there and to allow a 2-foot buffer behind the curb, which is a better condition than what is today. Obviously, right now, if you go off the road, you could hit that pole. Any place that we have poles close like that, we haven't tried to incorporate barrier curb where we can. So that gets rid of our clear zone requirements. The current clear zone for a 40-mile-an-hour design speed like Bushman is 10 feet off of the white line. And so that would be 4 foot of shoulder, 6 feet off of the edge of pavement. And so in instances where those physical barriers are within that, we've tried to incorporate that barrier curb in order to get rid of that clear zone requirement.
And just to clarify, going that route rather than having the power company move the poles is more cost efficient by quite a bit.
Yeah, what they had indicated to us, back when the the Cooperative Community Enhancement Project report was done. I believe that report said there was about $30,000 a pole just to construct and move a pole.
Yep.
What GRE informed us of, because all these lines are in dedicated easement to Great River Energy, the city would have to cover the cost of all their engineering. That would go along with not only moving the one pole in conflict, but you usually have to go 1 or 2 poles down the line to realign and reestablish that power, that transmission line. And so it's not only the engineering time, but the cost of $80,000 to $90,000 a pole, and that was kind of off the cuff what he was saying. At this point in time, it is much more beneficial to try and adjust that alignment to try to avoid them at all costs, and then provide safety measures, as Mr. Scott brought up, about barrier curb and things to help improve it.
Yep.
It's not the perfect scenario. We like to get poles further away.
Yes.
But we're dealing with kind of the constraints of the corridor as it currently exists and where those power poles are at right now.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council?
All right, getting into the total cost memo. So I was requested by Mr. Bonestack to provide an update to the total project cost, and I've done that here in the memo. I don't know if Deb,
Is that get in the packet?
no, because I sent it out on Friday, but
I don't know.
I'll run through it here, and if anyone has questions about it after the meeting, I can certainly talk through it with them from the audience standpoint. So total project costs, we're looking at, Jerry was kind of thinking about how is the city gonna finance this moving forward, and what are all the costs associated that we've moved through. And so, this memo outlines that and includes the breakout that you guys have agreed with Ideal Township, to construct the shared portion on the west end of Bushman Road, where Ideal is on one side, Breezy's on the other. Starting off with number one, the engineer's opinion of probable cost. Because we're at 100% plan set right now, we're able to produce a pretty confident engineer's estimate. So the total cost of Bushman Road and Ranchette Drive, just the roadway improvements, is right around $3,587,320. We usually break out the storm sewer improvements. That's your pond infrastructure, your riprap, things that are necessary to meet the requirements of your MPDES permit, which you're gonna need for construction. That's a total cost of $169,607 for a total roadway and storm sewer cost of $3,756,927. Back in, I believe it was August of 2024, I had worked with Mr. David Chansky and Dave Peterson from Ideal Township on creating a split out on a percentage basis of roadway length. And what we tried to do there was consider who should be responsible for what project cost, what breakout are we gonna use. It's really infeasible to break it out on a per quantity basis because we're constructing the roadway as one contiguous improvement. And typically, the easiest way to break out project costs is to take a portion of the cost and just interpolate that and say, Ideal Township is responsible for a certain percentage moving forward. And so, at that August 5th time, we went through that with Dave Peterson, and we established that Breezy Point's cost share of the construction and engineering costs would be 86.89%, and that's on a per length basis for Bushman Drive. The Ideal's portion would be 13.11%, and those are reflected here in that memo. Phase one, these were preliminary design and engineering services. Our total contract amount with the city for that phase one, which included the wetland delineation, the 30% design, laying out the corridor, the alignments, the horizontal and vertical alignment, doing geotechnical investigations, setting our pavement section, and really those high-end preliminary phase. That total contract amount with the city was $240,282. We did have, well, I should back up. The original contract was $171,702. The city and Ideal Township, because Ideal Township came on post us signing an agreement with the city of Breezy Point, and we added on that shared segment, we signed a contract amendment to include Ideal Township and Breezy Point shared segment after that phase one service got approved. So that 171,702 plus the contract amendment one for 68,580 comes to that $240,282 for phase one. Following the same percentages, that 86.89% and 13.11%, we come to a Breezy share of 208,781 and an Ideal share of $31,500. So, at the time when we got into phase two, which we were considering final design, the council elected to kind of break up phase two into two separate phases, that being phase 2A, which was our right-of-way acquisition, and phase 2B, which was our final design, plans, specs, and getting it out for bidding. We started phase 2A at the beginning of, I think it was January of '24, and phase 2B was authorized sometime around the beginning of, end of July, beginning of August. Total for phase 2A services was $199,120. That included all of the appraisal costs from our sub-consultants, and included the actual negotiations and acquiring the right-of-way as a part of phase 2A. Our phase 2A, like I said, was $199,120. We did, because Ideal Township elected to go after the right-of-way themselves, we simply provided them the sketch and legal descriptions for them to take on and do the negotiations themselves, rather than having us perform those services. So when Mr. Chansky was here, we closed out phase 1 and phase 2A of the project based on a cutoff date that we finished our sketch and descriptions with Ideal Township and the amount of services that we had performed up to that date. From there, we back calculated that Ideal Township for phase 1 and 2A was due $40,654.19. And I believe, and I don't know this for certain, but Breezy Point billed Ideal Township to close out phase 1 and phase 2A because Ideal was not moving forward with the full acquisition package like you guys are. Number 4 here, we've, like I said, appraisals are sitting in the back of the room. I've broken this out into kind of the 5 areas that the appraisals cover. The one being roadway permanent easement, which is the 33 feet either side of Bushman Road and Ranchette Drive from center line. So a 66-foot total right-of-way width, 33 feet in each direction for both roadways. The temporary construction easement value, that's everything outside of that 33 feet that we need to construct the project. It's basically a 2-year rental period where we're performing the improvements on these temporary easements, and then those get returned back to the property owner. There's a small damage value there that gets paid out. Drainage and utility easements, again, these are outside of that 33-foot dedicated easement. These are for ponding areas or ditching that are outside of that 33-foot dedicated easement. Those have a separate appraised value. The damages portion is specific site improvements. So that would be trees, signs, obstacles in the right-of-way that we are paying damages for, and the city is basically taking the right to either pay the property owner to remove those. And then there's one fee acquisition by title parcel, and that is at the intersection of County Road 11 and Bushman Road. There is a 40-acre parcel that is both on the southeast side of Bushman and northwest side. There's a triangle portion where Bushman Road goes through. We are planning a pretty substantial stormwater pond right there. The property owners requested, because what was left over after our proposed easement would leave pretty much an unusable, unvaluable tract of land. The city just purchased that outright and break that parcel into 2, and that is that reflected in that number. We have a total appraised value for all the Breezy Point right-of-way needs of $230,550, and that's what's reflected in the just compensation memo and what's reflected in those appraisals sitting in the back. Questions about that?
Who's the property owner where that retention pond is going? Do you remember?
I believe it's McAlpine.
Yes. He owns the property to the east, around the curb. It's the pine trees.
Yeah,
Okay.
the road splits off a corner of
Yeah.
Right.
the, 111 splits off.
Yep.
Any other
Be owned by
questions?
the state.
Okay, getting into phase 2B, final design plans and specs. Our total contract cost with the city was $187,384. I realize I had a typo here. That total phase 2B services should be that $187,384, going by the standard breakdown of 86.89 and 13.11. You get a total breezy point of $154,998 and ideal $23,036. Finally, phase 3 construction costs. We estimate that construction will be about $75,000 from our estimate that we will prepare for the city once we get to that construction phase. Breaking that down with the standard percentages once again, a breezy point share of $238,948 and an ideal share of $36,052. So getting into the summary of overall costs. So the grand total estimated cost of all the improvements, right-of-way acquisition, and appraised values, $4,880,263. The grand total breezy point share, based on all the sum of all those numbers, is $4,287,638. Ideal township share is $592,625. As a part of this overall analysis, we went back into the cooperative community enhancement report to get an idea and kind of a gut check analysis of what you guys were looking at the time during that process that you had with all these other jurisdictions to see what the anticipated cost would be at the 2021 timeline. Going into the report and looking at the dollar figures that Bolton and Mink had put together in their final report, kind of pulling those out, and as like I said, it's kind of a gut check. For the local roadway standard, including the construction, engineering, and right-of-way acquisition for Bushman Road itself, they had identified $4,090,000 in project costs. There was a separate report and an appendix at the end of the Cooperative Community Enhancement Project report that identified the construction cost using the existing alignment of Ranchette Drive. And that indicated they were anticipating a project cost on Ranchette of $1,550,000. And at the time of that cooperative report, they were anticipating a $600,000 project cost for Ideal Township to construct a portion of Bushman Road. So kind of, like I said, that gut check analysis to see if we're in the range of what you guys were anticipating to begin with. It looks as though Breezy Point is significantly under what that final report had kind of indicated. I think, you know, at that stage in the game when that report got finalized, you have to be very conservative. There's a lot of unknowns that come about. And Ideal Township just slightly below what was being anticipated from the total project cost perspective. Last sentence there, just I'll be available either tonight after the meeting if you guys have questions, or any of the people in the audience. I know there's a few folks here that want their appraisals tonight. I'll hand those out, stick around after the meeting to get those to folks. In the meantime, if anyone has questions, I have my contact information.
Thank you. Before you go, any questions from the council at this point for the presentation?
One question, the estimates that you pulled from the previous consultant that we were using, you didn't use any cost inflations over what we were doing. That was straight from their report. Okay, that's, if I remember correctly, we knew it was going to be, and so they're added some inflation, but looks like, okay.
Anything else?
No, I think it's really helpful memo, so thank you.
Yeah, and I think what the action tonight that we're asking for, and I think it's the next item on the agenda, is to approve the total appraised acquisition cost, so we can have Jerry sign that just compensation memo, which gives us authorization to send out the appraisal reports and distribute those to the 92 people that are wanting them.
All right, thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. So as we look at the agenda, it says Bushman Road project status. We got the report from Paul. It says 8A, Bushman Road project. He kind of gave us the overview, and then 8B. Before I move on to 8B, which is the piece of authorizing distribution of appraisals, I think there's a bigger question I think the council needs to address. And I'll speak to it first, and then I'll open it up. And that is, we've now heard the numbers. It's all been put together. Paul's got it, laid it out to us, did a very good job of it. It's all there. We've worked through this process. It's been split into a couple different phases. You guys have worked through that. We've gotten to this point where we're at. And the bottom line is we need to make a decision as a council to move forward with this project, to basically say, yes, we're going to do this. We're doing it. Now, I know there's discussion to talk about how we're going to pay for it. And that definitely will get. Administrator Bonesack, did you want to say
No,
something? Are you anticipating?
Yeah, I'm anticipating.
All right. But I just think the council needs to think about what we're going to do to move forward. Because here's the bottom line. We're in January right now. Okay? If we want to make this project shovel-ready this spring, we need to move forward.
No, in anticipation of what you're saying, I think Paul's presentation was very good, but I think there's some anticipated schedules that probably he could go through with you that might be helpful
Okay?
at this time.
I'll have my agenda up here too, so it gives me something. Back, I believe it was at the December meeting, we had committed to get the right-of-way acquired by the end of January.
Correct.
That is going to be really dependent on how negotiations go. We're pretty confident in, the numbers I think the appraisers have presented in their reports. If we hit that deadline, we would like to be in front of the council approving plans and specs and getting out to bid at the beginning of February. We're hoping to, we have some tree clearing stuff we gotta take care of in the winter months because of northern long-eared bats. That would just be issued as a separate quote package, to a few contractors to go out. Once the temporary easements are secured, we can go out and, get the trees removed by March 31st. And so that would be the real deadline, I would call, from acquiring the temporary easement standpoint, is getting the trees out of the way. I am very confident that this project is going to be very attractive to a multitude of contractors in the area. And so the bidding timeline is a little bit ambiguous because it is an attractive project. It's a good amount of work. It's going to keep a contractor busy or one of their crews busy for a majority of the summer. There's local contractors with aggregate suppliers right near the project. It's going to be a very attractive bid project. So I don't think we're going to be in the situation where, if we wait until middle of February, beginning of March to let the bids out and start opening them maybe by the end of March and awarding in April or even awarding early May. I don't think we're gonna be in a situation where we're gonna see high bid costs, but that is going to be another opportunity once we receive bids that the council has another point where they can say, bids came in way too expensive, let's take a step back, maybe re-let it out in October, September of 2025, see if some better bid prices come back. But with that said, I don't foresee that. I think there's a lot of hungry contractors that are going to want this project.
Thank
So
you.
that's kind of the overall timeline.
Thanks, Paul. Which he spoke to a couple of the points I was going to speak to, and that's the idea that having the opportunity to get early to the table to bid is going to be to our benefit, I believe. In the days of the world today where we live in with the road projects and stuff like that, there's a lot of them out there. And if we wait, if we drag our feet, we don't get going right away, that could end up costing more money too. So, and as Paul said, we do still have the ability, once the bids come in, to put a stop on it if we feel we needed to at that time. But I think it's imperative that as a council, we take action tonight so that these things can continue to move forward. That's just my thoughts, and I'll open it up to the council. Other discussion? Councilmember Scott, start with you down on your end. What's your thoughts?
Well, much the same since the beginning of discussions, sitting on this council. Very concerned by the costs, and those are a direct reflection of the extent of improvement that's being made to Bushman. The council has had no conversation at all looking at options, considering alternatives, what's an approach that's something short of a full reconstruct. I continue to feel like there's a lot of opportunity here to still bring forward a good improvement, create a safe and efficient road, but potentially at a lot less cost. Approaching $5 million for a road improvement of a road of that length, I have a hard time with that extent of cost on taxpayers.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Maroney.
Point of clarification too, on what we're looking at approving for the appraisals is the $230,550 estimated value.
Correct.
One of the things that we discussed, I couldn't tell you which month it was, but the road needs to be improved at some point, regardless, whether we pull the trigger this year or not. And so one of the discussions that was had was the right-of-way needs to be secured eventually. Costs will only go up for property. And so whether or not we pull the trigger on the final going forward with the project or not, the right-of-way and the acquisition needs to happen. And in my opinion, doing it now saves the taxpayers later in the long run.
Right.
I know Mr. Scott's brought up, that we haven't looked at additional alternatives. We have. This project's been going on since 2021. We may not have all been on the council at that point, but we have looked at other alternatives, and this was the route that we've kind of concluded down.
Yes. Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
Initially, it took me a long time to get behind this project. I did a lot of homework, asked a lot of questions. This project has been talked about for 20 years. I mean, it's forever. And it is, I rode with the police to see about the speeds, which turned out that trucks weren't speeding. They appear to. I mean, I was always one that thought they're all speeding, but they're not. In fact, our Public Works, I also rode with them in a dump truck to get a feel for that and understand how plowing is, and it's very dangerous for our Public Works staff. They have to plow it basically at 2 in the morning, between 2 and 5, because of the oncoming traffic and the way the road is designed and safety hazards. It needs to get done and it needs to be improved. And again, cost has been an issue since day one for 20 years. Unfortunately, Ranchette wasn't done, fully when the reconstruction of Ranchette took place, but that needs to be done. That road is in horrible shape. Unfortunately, with prescriptive easements, the easements weren't there for the project. I think Paul Sandy, engineering-wise, did a great job using curb and gutter at appropriate places. The Ziedler property was one that Administrator Bonsack and I went out and talked to Sandy along with Paul, and the way the original plan was, they would have lost every tree in their lot. I think somebody that lives at a property for 50 years, that shouldn't happen. So, I mean, I think we need to move forward with it.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Jensen. Councilmember Wall.
Yeah, I too am in favor of moving forward. I think it will just continue to get more expensive, and it is, I believe at this time, a dangerous road that needs to be improved. And I think it'll just continue to see more and more traffic over the next few years. And so it's important we do it the right way. And then also important that we, when we get the improvement cycle for roads, this road plays into that, so we can continue to save for improvements to the road in the future, so we don't have this situation come up again.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Paul. And yeah, I mean, all great points, and I agree. We've been dealing with this, we were dealing with as mayor the last time. And, you know, it's been going on for a long time. The way I look at it too, it's public safety. We start looking at that road, and I've talked to countless people that live in the city that drive that road, and they're happy that we're looking at getting it fixed because of the issues. I think, yeah, the cost is big, but there's a couple different things to look at. What we're doing is we're setting this up to do it right. So in other words, we're going to construct a road that's going to be able to handle the traffic it's getting, because we know that the traffic coming from the pits and other areas is not going to go away. That's going to continue as long as they're there doing that. Not to speak of the continued increased traffic by residents and others who use that road and utilize it as a cut across. It gets a lot more traffic now too, also because of 371 and the way that was realigned, and they cut across in Ackerson and then they cut across in Bushman. So we know that that's getting a big piece of it as well. So there's a lot of things there that I think are important for us to look at as we look at it and get it ready. So I agree. I think we need to move forward. I know that the cost is big, but at the same time, it's not going to get smaller. It's going to keep getting bigger. And so to take advantage of where we're at now and the work that's been done already, that's the other thing I want to keep in mind. We've already put a ton of work into design and time and energy and people that we've hired to do this. So that taxpayers' dollars are already being spent. So the idea to not do it and then have all those dollars spent, to me, makes no sense at all. The idea that we move forward and try to get that done in a timely fashion, I think, is the right way to do it. So I guess what I'm looking for is, I think we need to be able to put our foot forward and say that we're going to move forward. I think it gives staff then the ability to move forward and not wonder, okay, are we going to go all the way through with this project? Are we not? So I'd really like to see us kind of take action on that and then move to that second piece, which is taking action on the road right-of-way acquisitions. That's kind of where I'm at. So is there anybody that wants to, go ahead.
Actually, I think that we should be addressing the right-of-way acquisition first, and then going to this construction phase.
Okay.
We can't do anything without that right-of-way acquisition.
Sure.
And getting those appraisals
Yep.
in front of the folks and having some of those conversations now,
Yep.
I think is probably the most important part of that. I think the consensus amongst the council has been, from what I've seen, is that we need to move forward, but the first phase is the acquisition. We can't do anything without that acquisition.
And we can reverse that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But to me, to me, yes, okay, it's two different parts, but in my mind, it's all the same.
I think from what you could do tonight is to approve those appraisals going out to those folks, get some reaction from Paul and his appraisers back at your next meeting and go forward from there.
Okay.
The one thing I should say, if you do release those appraisals, those appraisals are confidential.
Right.
They're not something that gets floated around. It's something that belongs to the folks that have the parcels that are affected. I can't say what they can do, but from your standpoint, everything that we do with that is confidential information at this point.
Yes. Thank you for that clarification. All right. So we got some direction there from the administrator as to what's probably the best option to do, and I'm fine with that. I just think it's important that we move forward and keep this ball rolling so that we can get this project done. That's the way I see it. So if we look at B, then it's to authorize the distribution of their appraisals.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Councilmember Maroney. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a second from Councilmember Jensen? Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye to authorize distribution of appraisals.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So we can move forward with authorizing and distribution of their appraisals. So we've got that going forward for you, Paul, and we'll keep working in the right direction.
Because there's a community meeting or basically an open house.
Yes.
On Wednesday.
Yes.
We're gonna try and get those appraisals to the folks that are here that are
Yep.
affected. They can pick those up that are this evening. The other ones, we can have them delivered tomorrow to the ones that aren't here to pick those up. The other part of that is that everybody still will be getting a registered mail with a copy of their appraisals also. But we're just trying to do this to accommodate the meeting on Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you, Administrator Bonesack. All right, moving on. Item number 9 in the agenda is Resolution 01-2025, Annual Appointments and Organizational Structure. Basically, what this is I gotta get on my agenda here. These are the committees and structures. So if you look at the designations, it's basically, I'm not going to read through all of them. They're all in our board packet, but it's basically approving appointments to our different committees by members of the community. So how that process works is, of course, there's expiring terms, and then there's also resignations that happen from time to time on the committees. At that time, notice is put out that we're seeking applications. We encourage members of the community to apply to serve on these different committees and commissions. And there's various ones. There's the Cemetery Commission, there's Parks and Recs, there's Planning and Zoning. We have our Joint Powers, Heartland Cable. And so those are our main ones where we really have members of the public serving. Before I go into getting a motion to approve it, I do want to take the time to thank the citizens of Breezy Point who have served and continue to serve on those committees. It's much like us coming up here and sitting in these tough seats as members of the community. They come up and volunteer their time to sit in those committees and help and move things forward that are very important to the growth of our city. And so for people who have served and are no longer going to serve, I thank them publicly. And also who others have stepped up to continue to serve, I thank them for continuing to serve. And we also have some new members that'll be joining us as well. So super excited to have them joining us too. Basically for Parks and Recreation, I'm recommending Deanne Trottier, Megan Zierden, and Jody Miller to serve for terms for us. For Planning and Zoning, I'm recommending Joe Ayers and Teddy Zierden. For the Joint Powers, I'm asking for Councilmember Ball to serve on that with me. That Joint Powers Board is the board that serves for the Pequot Fire District. And then Councilmember Jensen serving as an alternate for that. Heartland Cable, that's Betty Duran, and then also Councilmember Maroney. And then also our city attorney as our official attorney, that would be Joe Langle. City prosecutor Don Ryan. City auditor Clifton Larson Allen. City engineer David Reese from Woodseth. Official depository Pine River State Bank. And then official newspaper Pine River Lakes in Journal. And then I did forget the Cemetery Commission, and that would be Case Bezo, who would be serving another term for us on that. And then also, if I'm not here to be able to act in my capacity, Councilmember Maroney has agreed to be on as vice or acting mayor if for some reason I'm unable to perform my duties. So, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 01-2025?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 01-2025.
Yeah, Councilmember Jensen with a motion.
I'll second.
Councilmember Maroney seconds. Any discussion?
Just, yeah, question on when it comes to auditing services and engineering and the like. I can't remember why we were having discussions a few months ago. Maybe it was due to the auditor or someone in front of the council, but I'm just wondering, when are we up for looking at those contracted services? Would this next year, now that we're in, be the last year? Again, I know it was brought up, I'm just not recalling what the time frame was.
Commissioner Bonesack?
I believe that this is the third year of a three-year contract.
It is.
So that would be for the year, the audit for 2025 would be or 26 would be the year for for reevaluation, or actually probably asking for RFPs.
So that's something that we would consider looking at doing towards the end of this year then,
Yeah.
right, for 26? Okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I was pretty sure we were in the third year of that, so. Good question, though, Councilmember Scott. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor approve by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. All right. Item number 10, discuss recreation of committees. This is something that I asked to have put on the agenda. It's something that I think had been suspended, I believe, probably about a year and a half ago, something like that. I'm not real sure what the time frame is. Bottom line is the committees, in the past, the council members served on committees as liaisons. They were there to go to the meetings, listen to what was going on in those committee meetings, and then be able to return back to the council and provide reports to the council as to what was happening within the committees. Also, these bodies, not all of them, but most of them are recommending bodies. So they make recommendations to the council on action items wanting to take place, and then the council takes action based on what they feel they want to do. And they can send it back to the committee for further evaluation or critique and bring it back to us again. So when a council member serves on those committees, they have the ability then to bring that recommendation back from the committee, sort of the council, if they need to take action on something. I think it also then provides a conduit directly from the council to the committees. And I think it helps keep the staff out of there as well, of not having to deal directly all the time with the committees. At times, our staff are there to serve as resources, and that's what I see the staff being, as resources on the committees where they need to be, and then be able to give information to the committee so the committee can take actions and then, again, come back. So I see this as a really valuable thing to have as a council. I think in the past couple of years, you guys were having workshops where work was being done but no action was being taken. You guys were talking about different issues and items. By having the committees and dealing with some of that, it helps alleviate having to have those types of workshops. A couple of the committees that will be brought back that are more internal are personnel and finance, if we were to go this route. Those, I think, are very important. Our staff continues to grow here. Our city continues to grow. I think it's super important to have council members as a part of that process so that they can be helping with that. I know there's been talk and there is money having been budgeted with regards to some assistance from a human resource consultant. And I think that's something that we absolutely should consider to be able to give that, to be that person as a resource for those council members that would serve on that personnel committee. But that provides that conduit between the council and the staff as we work on personnel things, whether it be negotiating a contract. I remember the police contract was negotiated when I served as mayor the last time, and our council members that served on the personnel committee were the people that worked through that process with the union on that, and that was valuable to have, to be able to bring that back and share it with the council as things progress and what took place and what went on. Finance, of course, that's an important one as well, I think. We're talking about budgeting process. We're talking about things such as the Bushman Road project and bringing back recommendations to the council of, here's some options that we've come up with of how to pay for the project. Here's other things to look at, capital improvement plans, whatever that may be. So along with that, it's the other committees, which were the ones I listed earlier. One would be potentially a roads committee. We did have a roads committee. I know right now we have an adjunct committee, so to speak, where members of the public are serving on that to help with this process of developing a new capital improvement plan. I think we could make that official committee again and have council members serving on that. We already have that happening, so we could just make it formal and official. But I think these are really important to have, and I think it's a good way for us to be connected to the community as well through some of these committees. That we're there, we're, like, whether it be planning and zoning, whether it be cemetery, whether it be parks and rec, we're there, we're present, and I think that makes a big difference. In the community can see that, you can engage then and listen to hear what's going on. They may have questions that they can give to you that you can bring back to the council then. You provide then the conduit to that process. And I think it gives us an opportunity to work through some of those things, get recommendations back, and move things forward. I thought, personally, when we had the committees when I was mayor, it worked very well. And I thought it was a very good use of time by the council to be able to be a part of those committees and bring back reports and share that information with the council as we move forward on a variety of different projects. So that's where I'm at with this. I would like to see us reestablish the committees. And if we move forward with approving to bring back the committees, I have talked to some of you already about potentially where I think might work well, but I'm always open to listening. If there are certain places you'd rather serve on, I'm open to that. So by all means, I'm not set in stone on what that is. I'd just like to see us get back to where we could have committee liaisons from the council serving on those and being a part of that. So I now open it up to the council for discussion to give me some feedback and thoughts of what they're thinking. So Councilmember Ball, do you want to start down there? Any thoughts?
I don't know. I've thought about this since I saw your email. I haven't really. There was a reason we did away with the committees at the time, and I think part of that was there wasn't really in some situations there didn't feel like there was a need for us to be there because we can't be voting members. We can't really be speaking. We can
Correct.
just be observing.
Right.
On some of the committees that I served, I know that individuals oftentimes would go to one person on that committee, not both people. So there would be some discussions with just one person, and then later on, that other person would just get informed of sort of what was happening. Okay. So it didn't really seem like a committee anyways.
Okay.
I thought the finance committee worked well at the time. But again, I think that just depends on the whole of the group being trusting of the individuals who come back with recommendations or feedback based on what we find out in those finance committees. So I think it depends on how the city council can work together, whether these committees will work to have them. So I do think the finance one is a good idea. I would prefer like an HR sort of situation for the staff as opposed to a personnel committee. But I'm not opposed to seeing how that works, if it maybe works this time better than it did before. In concert with sort of like an HR consultant.
Right.
Because, of course, the individuals on the personnel committee don't really have the expertise to be making a lot of those decisions, and I'm sort of leery that we're maybe making decisions and discussing things we shouldn't be in certain instances. Some of the other, committees, I'm not, set on whether we should have a standing member. Maybe we have a committee member, but they, only go to certain meetings where the individuals serving, on those committees think that they want that liaison there. I don't know. I guess I haven't sort of worked through whether that all makes sense or.
Okay. Good points. Appreciate your input. Councilmember Jensen?
I think Councilmember Ball makes some excellent points. The Personnel Committee, I'm strongly in favor of if there's an HR resource for the members. I mean, on a contract basis, as needed basis. Finance, I think, would be a good committee as well. The committee liaisons, again, Councilmember Ball brought up some good points. A lot of the times we're not needed there. I think it's important to have one or two people. It would be nice if there's a backup or two that you can, switch off meetings. Plus, I don't know, Councilmember Ball and Councilmember Maroney, previously on committees, if it, yearly, at some point gets rotated too. So you're getting exposure, to different committees. But, I do think they serve a purpose, especially streets. I volunteered to be, the liaison for that. And, the committee has a lot before them and a lot to do.
Right.
The cemetery commission, a lot has gone on in the cemetery the past year. Same with Parks and Recs. I mean, now they're talking about pickleball courts, as well as planning and zoning. Sometimes there's issues that,
Sure.
impact the city, such as commercial development,
Right.
things like that council is going to be involved in.
Correct.
And at the time when we dissolved them, there wasn't any personnel or finance committees for meetings for an entire year. So at that point, it's like, well, okay, if we're not having meetings, why do we have the committees? Let's try a workshop. But I'm in favor of, the personnel finance coming back and, try the, committee liaisons as well.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Jensen. Councilmember Maroney.
I'm in favor of bringing back the committees. I think over the last year, we've learned a lot about ourselves and the city, and there was some important details that were worked out in those committees in the years previous. I agree, echo an HR consultant at those personnel committees.
Yes.
I think Ms. Ball speaks perfectly on point. We're not HR people, and so some of those things were just a little nerve-wracking of should we be discussing it, how should we be discussing it. So bringing back an HR consultant, I think, is going to be an important, vital part of that personnel committee. I have served, I know you say streets, it was a road committee that had frequent meetings, and then it didn't have frequent meetings. It was all dependent on what's coming up. We do have the streets committee now for the capital improvement plan, so whether or not that becomes an official committee and there's 2 council members, that does have valuable input as they work on the capital improvement plan. I've also served on the Parks and Recreation as a liaison, and then I've also served on the Planning Commission. Both of those, there's times that you're not needed and sometimes you are needed. So, bringing those back as liaisons, I'm not opposed to. I think there were certainly aspects that were beneficial to having those.
Okay, great, thank you. Councilmember Ball, or Councilmember Scott, excuse me.
You must have been reading my mind in that I definitely agree with Councilmember Ball, and I think a good share of the reason why we moved away from the committees, especially with the Parks and Rec and Planning, was really what value as a liaison, being at meetings, having a role as such, were we providing. I kind of like the approach, frankly, where as a result of not having liaisons from the council to those groups, we invited the chair or the vice chair of those groups to come to the council anytime that there was a specific recommendation that they were making, whatever they wanted to run by the council for approval. I wouldn't mind us maybe continuing to look at that as an approach. I think it's nice to have that rapport and interaction between the council and the committee chairs or vice chairs. I don't know that going forward, we're probably going to add a whole lot of value to any of the liaison committee assignments like planning and Parks and Rec. So I guess I'm a little indifferent. I can go probably either way on those committees. With personnel and finance, I definitely feel that council needs to have some role, some involvement in those areas. I mean, as the employer and as the people that are in charge of the purse strings, so to speak, we definitely need to, have some level of involvement and role there. At the same time, I think, as I see a number of items in front of us tonight for approval, maybe part of what the Finance Committee can do is come up with some framework where if certain expenses fall within budget and, the department heads are wanting to move forward with whatever level of expenditure, I don't know that they always should need to come to the council for approval. It kind of feels a little bit repetitive. But overall, yeah, I agree with everything that everyone else has said.
Okay, thank you. So I kind of hear a kind of a mixed bag a little bit, and I understand the points. They're all well taken. Kind of what I'm hearing is that there are some committees we think are very important and that we should have involvement in. There's others that maybe don't necessarily require as much involvement by the council, which maybe a compromise to that is something along the lines that we have somebody who's a liaison, but they don't necessarily always have to attend. So let's use planning and zoning, because that's an example I'm thinking of, okay? They're a very self-directed commission. They do the work. They have that authority to do that. That's a very unique one. What I see that can be valuable, though, is if from time to time we have a council member that stops in or visits the meeting or listens, can kind of get a feel for what's going on there. We know that they're getting ready to go into a huge process right now, and that's a rewrite of our ordinances, our zoning ordinances. And so we know that that's going to be a big project they're going to be tasked with over the next year. So I do echo, though, I think that's good, Councilmember Scott, the idea of maybe having one of them come every once in a while to be able to, present to us. I'm not opposed to that. So I guess I'd like to speak to Councilmember Ball's comment about the council being able to work together. That is our job, is to work together as a team to represent the community that we've been elected to represent. At times that can be challenging, but I think we're all up to the task. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here. And I think we're able to work through those things. I appreciate the comment about at times maybe others in the committee weren't always included, and I think that's going to be super important as we move forward, whatever committee it is, that all the members, council members, if they're involved, are involved. And I get that. And I would expect then hopefully if that's not happening, come talk to me. Let me know, because I can help make sure that process gets all inclusive. I think that's part of what I see a little bit of my job as the mayor is to facilitate that ability to happen, to make sure that we can get the work done. I echo 100%. HR resource consultant, absolutely. That's why the money was budgeted. So I think we need to get somebody on board and look at that process so that we have that person there. I agree 100% that any of us sitting up here, none of us are versed in the ability to handle what those things are when it comes to personnel, especially as we continue to grow as a city and get bigger. So, I can see that we definitely would need, as if we reestablish a personnel committee, to make sure we have that person on board working with us in a timely fashion as we move forward. So I guess, I would like to see us move forward with the committees and having people on there and, be able to do that. We can work through the process of figuring out who wants to serve. I know some of you have talked to already about that, and I know we all have time constraints. I get that too. Realize that I will serve on committees as well. So this is me. I'm a council member as well. So I would look at being on the finance committee for sure if we brought it back. I think that's very important for me to be there. I would also, of course, be there at the fire district and handling that piece as well. And probably from time to time dropping in on some of the other ones just to drop in. Even though I may not be the person that's the liaison directly with that. So, I would like see us go back to this, but ultimately it is up to the council. So whatever you guys decide to do, I'm okay with. But that's kind of where we're at. If we don't bring back the committees, that means we're going back to a workshop schedule because we have to have something in place where we're doing that. I personally don't see that as being the right vehicle or mechanism to get things done what we need to do. There's a lot of work that we have to do, and I think some of that's got to be done beforehand so when we come to this council meetings, we can get it taken care of. And, comments about the finances and working through that and getting that streamlined, other things, I see the benefit. So, anyway. Anybody want to move forward with this?
Well, I'm just wondering if as a matter of approach, because I would agree, at least I was kind of picking up on, there seemed to be more consensus with the personnel and finance. Would we ever consider moving forward with appointments to those two committees and maybe reconsider the other committee liaison appointments once we get the administrator position filled?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that could be.
I'm
an
not
approach.
opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that at all. I don't know.
I would be fine with that, yeah.
I think the only one that I think needs to happen now is the streets, because that's ongoing, that CIP is going to be presented to the Streets Committee at the January meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe? Or Nick?
Yes, we'll be presenting on the 16th.
So I think that needs to have a committee person.
liaison.
A liaison right away and not, and, keep moving forward. As far as the other one, I mean, Cemetery Commission, I attended every meeting. There was no liaison. I will continue to
know.
attend, the meetings. And as far as the others, Parks and Rec, to Councilmember Scott's point, and planning, and, Councilmember Ball and Maroney, sure, we can, discuss that. But I do think that if we move forward, planning, if there is something, commercial development in the city, something that's going to be applicable to council, variances and cups for 3 hours or 2 hours with, because they need a variance for septic system or, whatever, there's really not much interaction. But I think the chairs, I think there needs to be more of a relationship between the chairs and the liaison, which when I, for the year we had committees, there really wasn't. They need to communicate, should the council member be there? Things like that. And, the chairs coming to the council meeting, I think is a good thing too.
Yeah, I like the idea of the continuing, and I think it's just been Parks and Recs thus far, but coming to the city council meeting, because not only does it give all of us an opportunity to hear what's important and what's going on, but also it's for those members of the city that, may or may not be more likely to attend this meeting than maybe one of those those other committee meetings, so.
Points. Well, and here's another way to look at it too, and I'm kind of hearing this, and I don't disagree with this. Planning and zoning is one that maybe it doesn't have somebody. It's a standalone, it does its own work. They're going to be bringing recommendations to us. I mean, we could go probably without having somebody on that one. And maybe we look at, park and recs and the streets and personnel and finance and cemetery, because you're going anyway.
I'm going anyway.
So we might as well make it official and just say you're the liaison to that. And I think that's a good one I think it's important because you just said last year was a lot of work that went on there. And so it
Yes,
made a
it was.
difference, you being there and knowing the information, understanding what was going on. Because I'm not there.
Yeah, it was a busy year.
So maybe that's what we look at, kind of looking at those, or potentially we look at just the personnel and finance right now, and we wait till the new city administrator comes. I think the streets is important, and I really think we might as well just do the others and get them in place, and then once the new city administrator comes on, we can talk to them. That's just again my thinking. That's not saying that's the way we have to go, but that's kind of where I'm at. So. I guess we're at a point where there needs to be some action taken if anybody's willing to want to take some action.
Well, listening to the discussion, I think, I don't know if you want to break it down, but let's break it down. I'll make a motion to reestablish the personnel committee, and I'll even volunteer to be on that.
Okay, so you want to do them one at a time?
Break them down at one at a time, then that way anybody who wants to volunteer to appoint that, vote on that, whatever.
Okay.
If you want to, otherwise I can say finance committee, street committee as well.
Yeah, let's.
Want all
yeah,
three?
Yeah, let's.
Then I'll
if
make a
you would.
motion to reestablish the personnel, finance, and streets committee.
I would add in cemetery commission because I'm going anyhow.
Throw that in, I'll amend my motion.
I'll second.
So my motion from Councilmember Maroney is to reestablish Personnel, Finance, Streets, and Cemetery Commission at this time,
Yes.
with liaisons.
Cemetery
from
Commission would
council.
be more a liaison than a committee.
Correct, but
Yes.
it kind of, yes, but still, we're going to put a liaison on it,
Yes.
so. And you second that? So
Correct.
Councilmember Jensen seconds that motion. Discussion on that? Okay, hearing no discussion, all those in favor of reestablishing these four that have been listed signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, so now that we've reestablished, let's quickly talk about, Councilmember Maroney already said he'd be willing to serve on the Personnel Committee. Councilmember Ball, would you be willing to serve with him on there when we get and then we would work to get an HR consultant on contract to work with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay? All right. Finance. I would like to serve on the Finance Committee. Councilmember Scott, would you be interested at all in serving on the Finance Committee with me?
Sure.
Okay. So Councilmember Scott and I will take on the Finance Committee. Streets, I know Councilmember Jensen, you're already there.
I volunteer to do it again.
Councilmember Maroney, I know you've served on roads in the past. I think it's important that we probably have a couple people there, so if there's an alternate needed, it doesn't, so you guys can kind of work with each other to say, hey, I can make it this time, or maybe a trade-off every other one. So, I don't think it's necessary for both of you to be there all the time. So-
I can certainly plan myself, if we want to officially make that a committee, I'll make myself available for those
Okay.
majority of the times.
Okay, good. So then it would be Councilmember Jensen and Councilmember Maroney on the Streets Committee. We know on the Cemetery Commission, it's going to be Councilmember Jensen. Did I miss any? I think those were the four we said we'd reestablish, correct?
At this time, correct.
Yes, at this time. And we can always come back and look at the other ones. I don't disagree with Parks and Rec and planning in that they're, a lot of times, there's not a lot there. Park and Recs is one that I think maybe we want to think about in the future to have somebody there. And that might be, just to kind of see what's going on and be there and be able to report back. There's a lot of work going on there. I think there's going to continue to be a lot of work with the Park and Recs. Again, planning and zoning I don't have an issue with. They're a standalone. They do their thing. They're a little different in that aspect. So, and they're going to keep us informed, and we're going to know through the administrator and staff from that perspective. So, okay. And we will work then, we'll work with staff moving forward with the personnel to look at, seeing what we can do for RFPs or requests for proposals on a consultant. The money's budgeted, so we might as well start thinking about getting somebody in place and having that person available as a resource to work with the Personnel Committee. And as far as the committee's not meeting, they will meet. I will make sure they meet. So we will be setting up, I'll work with Administrator Bonesack, start thinking about a schedule of those times. And if they're needed, they meet. If they're not, they don't. So, and with that being said too, in the other committees, if you're serving on the Cemetery Commission and you see the agenda is something you feel, well, it's pretty mundane and you've got something else, then I understand that there may be times you might not be able to make it. That's okay. It's just, I think having our presence there can be beneficial. And then maybe we can work with the committees like Park and Recs and others moving forward to ask them every once in a while to come in and do a presentation to us. What's going on? What do you guys got? Cemetery Commission the same way, maybe too, at times. So I think that's beneficial. So, all right, thank you.
Do we need that as an official motion, and are we good with everybody assignments as discussed?
We can include it in the first one if you want, or you can do a special, a second motion.
So I'll make a motion.
There you go.
Those
that-
amendments.
Yeah.
Personnel Committee will be Maroney and Ball. Finance Committee will be Rogan, Camp, and Scott. Streets Committee will be Maroney and Jensen. And Cemetery Commission will be Liaison Jensen.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Jensen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward, item 11, police equipment purchase. Chief Sandell, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in reference to a purchase of, it will be a third Lucas device for us. Our 2 paramedics each have a Lucas in their squad cars. Our EMT does not. He's been with us 2 years and saved 5 lives, so he could probably benefit from one as well. So for those that do not know what a Lucas device is, it does, it's a chest compression system used during CPR. So it's attached, battery powered, does perfect compressions. It mounts over the top of the patient, it's out of the way. And therefore, on a night where it's bad weather and a paramedic arrives on scene with that device, he can place it, he can start an advanced airway, he can start an IV, start giving medications and other things without the need of someone else doing compressions. So they can do it all on their own. And even when others arrive, it keeps the space around the patient clear for those to start advanced airways, provide medications, and starting IVs and whatnot. So they're tremendously beneficial for what they do. We obtained a quote for a Lucas, which was $23,250.50. Sergeant Garcia obtained a grant from Essentia Health for $5,000 towards the purchase of that device, and the city has already received those funds. This was a budgeted purchase, so we have money available. After applying the grant, the cost to the city will be $18,250.50. Any questions?
Any questions from the council?
No.
Pretty straightforward. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the request of an additional Lucas device.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Scott to approve the device, a second by Councilmember Wall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Let's see. Item 12, Public Safety Building Maintenance, Chief Sandell. 12A, actually.
Our public safety building is 20 years old, and it's in need of some exterior maintenance. So the outside of the building is stucco, and from what I was told, they used some different formula with this stucco 20 years ago when it was built, some new high-tech something, which is very difficult to find contractors that work with this particular product we have right now. So thank you to Joe Zierden for finding a contractor who has the ability to work on the building and obtaining a quote for us. With that said, I also attended a Chiefs meeting, Region 5 Chiefs meeting at Sourcewell, and I spoke with their grant coordinator, trying to identify grants that would be available for some of our projects coming up, including this building maintenance. So with that said, the quote we received for the building was $38,950. Sergeant Garcia authored the grant application. He's very good at that. He's a phenomenal grant writer, so I use him for that. The grant was approved, and the city has already received funds for $29,212.50. So after applying the grant, the total cost of the city to repair our building will be $9,737.50. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? That's outstanding from getting that grant from Sourcewell.
They're fantastic to deal with.
Tell Sergeant Garcia, nice job. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's outstanding. I mean, anytime we can get a grant, cut the cost, go from almost 40 to 9,000, that's a pretty good deal, so. All right, any further questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll make the motion to approve the repairs.
I have a motion from Councilmember Maroney to approve repairs. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Jensen. Again, any further discussion?
Just a quick point of clarification, was any of this expense factored into the budget for this year?
Yes, it was. So we
Okay.
have, sorry, I should have mentioned that. We have $45,000 in our building maintenance fund. So those monies were going to be used for this project and an upcoming project, with a remainder still there for something else that may come up. So it was budgeted, yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other discussion or questions? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. 12B, Chief Sandel.
So as we mentioned, the building's 20 years old. We began having some furnace failures and issues a couple of years back. They were out of their service life, so we were unable to get parts to maintain those furnaces. So we began a couple of years ago replacing furnaces one a year. We have 3 furnaces for the public safety building. This requested purchase of one more furnace will be our final furnace. And with that said, I was working with Thielen Construction in reference to these furnaces, and they've come out with a new model and different Freon, and they said if we hurry, we hopefully can get one more like we have currently the other 2. So this is a continuous process to upgrade our furnaces to avoid some of the issues we've had in the past. So we obtained a quote from Thielen for the furnace installation and repairs, and that is also included in the budget for our building maintenance. The quote was $12,775.
That's install and removal of the old one?
Correct, that's everything. Any questions?
Yep. Any questions from council?
None for me.
Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the furnace for the public safety building.
I have a motion from Councilmember Jensen to approve the purchase. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilmember Ball. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief Sandell.
Thank you.
Item 13, City Administrator Recruitment, Interim Administrator Bonsack. What do you got for us?
Just basically an update. The job has been posted. It is being advertised. It will be open until January 31st. There's a brochure or a flashy background of Breezy Point that's being prepared. That should be out by the end of this week sometime. I'm told that we, as of today, have about 6 applicants. Whether those are viable or not, I don't know, but there were 6 people that did submit applications last week. That said, it looks like once those applications, once they close, there would be an initial screening by the consultant to narrow that down to a number that's somewhat manageable. Based on that number, the question, there'd be an initial screening that would have to be done to try to get the number down even further. I see that as an opportunity to utilize the Personnel Committee if you so choose.
Yes.
Or if the council chooses, they can do that as a whole workshop type situation. I give you those 2 options. We don't need to make that this decision this evening, but I want to put it in front of you as being potential. We need to be very careful, again, when we go through this process, that names are left behind, quite frankly, and not put out in the public until someone is actually submits to an interview. Give it some thought. See if that's something that the Personnel Committee should be working on initially. The final, and possibly even the second interviews would be, one could be virtual, first one with the whole council. The second one would probably be face-to-face with the council.
Anybody have any questions for Administrator Bonsack on the process? Like we're moving around? thank you for the options on that. We'll take it under consideration and come up
I
with
didn't
something.
have that option until this evening, though.
Well, you still gave it, though. So, okay, and you said January 31st is the deadline, right, for applications to be submitted?
Yep.
Do they, and that's probably, I don't know, do they look for a certain amount of applicants before then they decide, do we need, so I guess what I'm asking is there anything that says sometimes they extend it because they didn't get enough, or are they looking for a number, or?
Well, I don't think they're looking for a number. I'm thinking they're looking for a number of quality,
Qualified candidates. Okay,
qualified applicants.
got it.
Now, if they had 20 applicants and none of those applicants met the minimum qualifications,
Right.
then I think we'd be going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, fine,
Yeah.
let's
Okay.
extend it.
Okay.
I don't see that happening,
Yeah.
but
I
there's
just
not a
asked.
magic number. I think from what I've experienced in previous settings, they've basically started out with 14 to 16 folks, narrowed that down to 10, from 10 to 5 or 3 or whatever
Something like that, yeah.
you folks choose to have for a final interview. That said, if you do a final interview and you don't find someone that you're comfortable with, I would suggest you go back to the drawing board.
Yep.
I think it's that important that you be comfortable with the person that you choose.
Yeah, I agree. All right, thank you for that update. Number 14 on the agenda, pay request, City Hall renovation, Administrator Bonsack.
This is, I think, the third pay request from High Tech for the building. There's also in your packet there's copies of lien waivers which are signed by subcontractors saying they've been paid. There's an update of the progress that's there. The one thing that I've been made aware of today was that some of the rafters that are proposed to go up on the building are not the right fit. And there may be some delays because of rafters not being the proper ones. That's just an FYI. Not unusual to be, for something glitches to happen, bumps in the road, per se. That said, we're totally vacated the council chambers. Monday night, Wednesday night, the neighborhood meeting for Bushman will be held there, and that will be the last meeting that we can hold there.
Okay,
And the only reason it's not over here is because
size.
the postcards went out and they were pre-printed
No.
before anything happened, so we don't want to
Got
give
it.
anybody some bad information at this time.
Okay,
With that, I would ask for a motion to approve the pay request.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ball. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Maroney to go ahead and pay the number 3 application to High Tech. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, item number 15 on the agenda, staff reports. Mr. Bonsack.
The first item that you have is in your packet is a listing of all our investments as of today. We're going to try and get those to you on a very regular basis so that you know where we're sitting. We would also look at using that information with the Finance Committee when we start talking about Bushman. But it's an FYI thing more than anything else, and there's no action required.
Okay, thank you. 15B?
Nick is here, Nick prepared this end of the year update from Winseth. Again, Winseth is our city engineers. Nick is the engineer, and can't remember whether you're the engineering training or the engineer principal.
My name's Nick Peterson, I'm with Woodsett. I am an engineer in training right now. I saw you got Dave Reese's name up there. I've been working with him for a handful of years now. We just put together a year-end letter for the city, just extending our gratitude for the opportunity to assist the city with all the projects we've done in the last year, and years past. And thank you again for selecting us as your city engineer. I can go through some of the projects we did last year. Most of you are probably aware of all of these, but sanitary sewer extension feasibility study for County Road 11, which may be coming back around here. Some discussion on that. The Shoreview Lane damage assessment and construction administration services are ongoing. That project will be wrapped up in the spring. Currently working on the capital improvement plan. We have a road committee meeting on the 16th. We'll be presenting, which would probably be 95% on that. A couple questions we have to get answered for direction to finish that up. And the city hall as well. Again, thank you for the opportunity to assist the city.
Absolutely. Thank you for you guys doing the great work that you do, and we look forward to working with you again this year.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep, you're welcome. 15C.
Currently, we are insured by the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust. They have the property casualty and the workers' comp, and they're our principal insurance agency. We currently have an agent of record, which is Weisinger Engel Insurance Agency. They've been the agent of record for many years, and I look back, and as long as anybody can remember, they've been the agent of record. That said, the city has received a request from another agency to become the agent of record. Primary work was started on regarding the insurance renewals for workers' compensation. Property and casualty is up for renewal in April of 2025. There's a letter in your packet from the Lakes Central Insurance Agency, the agency that's requesting that they become the agent of record. There's also a information packet from the League of Minnesota Cities, which basically says is that the city council can choose whoever they want for that. Some cities use RFPs to determine agent of record. Some cities negotiate for the agent of record. Typically, the agent of record is paid 10% to service the insurance claims and renewals for the city. What I would suggest to the council is that they have because there's a request to change, the council may want to consider one of the following options regarding the request to change the agent of record. Continue utilizing the current agent, decide to change to another agent, utilize a request for proposal for a new agent, or continue with the current agent for 2025 renewal and initiate a request for proposals for the 2026 renewals. And there could be some other avenues that you want to take, but that's the ones that I've identified that would be options for you.
Okay, thank you. From my perspective, if we want to even consider thinking about changing, I would say that we'd be best served to continue with who we have currently and look in 2026. We know already that we have several others that we're going to be looking at. We just heard about that earlier with the 3 years, so maybe that might be the more beneficial time to do it rather than do this, stay with who we have. It seems like we've had good record with them in the past and their work they've done for us. So that would be my thought, is go with the D if we're going to even look at changing.
Yeah, that
To
was my
consider it
thought,
in 2026, when we have to look at our accounting and other stuff at that time, rather than now. So that's my thought. Any,
I would tend to agree with that. I think that we're already into the new year. It would be probably a little awkward of sorts to start an RFP process now. When does the city's policies renew?
Policy, workers' comp renews for the first beginning of the year,
Okay.
and property casualty is April 1.
Yeah,
you'd have to look at like the end of this year, then we'd
Right.
start, we maybe like RFP in November or December so that we could make a decision before the first of the year, since the first is when the other one would be
I
done.
think if you're gonna do an RFP for 2026, I think you should probably be doing that midsummer, late summer.
Okay.
I don't think you should be waiting any longer past that.
Because do they need to be working on it in November, December for like a January 1
Okay.
policy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I would agree with option D. I know personally, I redid my insurance. I think everybody sitting in this room has had their insurance rates go up. I think it's something we should do.
Well, it never hurts.
Yeah.
In my mind, it doesn't hurt to do that. How long have we been with Weisenecker? A long time?
A long time.
So that's to-
Brad might even know.
Well,
can't
that's,
hardly remember what I did yesterday, let alone 20 years ago.
Okay, I'm sorry.
but that's to my point though, that it's a good thing to do. Every once in a while, you should always look. You just never know. So, okay, well, I don't, would you like an official on that, or are we just good
No, I
to
think
consensus and,
That's just
Okay.
the direction I need.
Yep, okay. sounds good. All right, thank you on that. Number 16, mayor and city council reports. Well, I don't know if we have any really reports. It sounds like the streets committee, which will become official here sometime soon, will be doing a meeting here, and it looks like you're gonna have a capital improvement plan about finished up? Okay,
Yeah, I
Councilmember Ball?
saw a mention about the community gardens, and you can like start to reserve your plots if you need to, so I guess just a plug for that, just a reminder, but.
okay.
One thing, I did send Administrator Bonsack an email last year. I volunteer for the Lakes Area Food Shelf.
Yes.
And I made a request to then Administrator Chansky to do a proclamation that, the city would support the food shelf in the month of March, and again, have, fundraising for donations, or, accept donations, I should say. So I will be at the February meeting, but just so everybody knows that I'd like it on the March agenda if possible, because it's my understanding when you do the proclamations, you have to do it the month. At least that's what I remember David saying.
Well, I think you can do it anytime, and quite frankly, we've earmarked it for the February meeting.
Okay, all righty.
So it'll be taken care of, it
Okay.
sounds like. So
Thank you.
You're all good to go there. I do have one little quick thing. We will have our first quarter meeting for the fire district coming up here in January. I believe that our city serves as the chair this year. I can't remember, can you tell me?
Yep, you're right, you're up.
That's what I thought. So,
Yep.
and we meet quarterly on that. So,
Monday.
yeah, yes, on that. So we'll be attending that meeting, and I'll have a report on that for the February meeting. So we'll be doing that. Anything from Councilmember Maroney, Councilmember Scott? No? Okay. Well, we'll have a little more to that to share as we move forward with this. 17, agenda forecast.
Just a forecast, the only thing I want to, again, Bushman will come up in February
Right.
again. It probably will be your biggest item in front of you. We're on the 11th of February, we've scheduled a joint planning commission city council meeting at the will be at 7 PM. And the consultants that are embarking on the ordinance rewrite and some of the comp plan issues would like to meet with both bodies at the same time to talk about some of the issues. So if you flag that on your agendas, that'd be appreciated.
What date again?
February 11th. I think that's the second Tuesday of the month, if I'm not mistaken. That would be the planning commission's regular meeting.
I would assume we'll get a notice on that.
We will give you a notice, yes, but I
you.
just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
All right.
The only other thing I would share with you is that I am going to be out of town for the last half of this week and next week. I'll be back on the 20th. I do have a phone with me, and I'm available for phone calls if you need.
Okay, sounds good. All right, moving on. Final item, motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Who's that?
It was me.
Councilmember Scott made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Ball made a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is adjourned.